Welcome to There Once Was a Note on Woody Radio. I'm Mike DeAngelis. We started off today's show going to Farm Aid 1994 with Neil Young and Crazy Horse Down by the River. Right now on the show, I am pleased to welcome back a good friend of ours, Vic Wayne from Star Collector. We're going to do Their Canadian Band Part 2. Welcome, Vic.
Hey, thanks for having me again. It was great fun the first time. Let's kick it out again.
All right, glad to have you back. And just for the folks who didn't hear the first segment that we did a few shows back, They're a Canadian Band is about the concept of regional music that becomes national music that becomes global music. A good example of this would be Aerosmith. They started out in Boston. They went national across the United States. They went global. This doesn't hold true for every band. Some bands never make it out of the regional status, and some bands who hit the global or national level may sell a lot of records, but they don't have a lot of credibility. They just happen to be in the right place at the right time. A good example of that would be the hair metal bands from the 80s. They were very popular. They sold a ton of records. You bring them up in a conversation these days, and it's a guaranteed groaner. So I wanted to know authentically for listeners in Canada, and especially people like you, Vic, who grew up and did music of your own, inspired by the artists that you heard. Who are the credible artists? Who are the artists who are respected and still held in very high regard in Canada? And you've chosen a number of them for us. And who do you have up first?
I've got a band from Vancouver. The song we're going to start with is titled Blast. So let's blast it. They're called Pure.
All right. We'll be back at the end of this set to talk about the songs Vic chose.
Opted for politics, a special bag of dirty tricks. Spend more time on your golf game than you ever did with your kids. We used our imaginations to block you out. Now we got supernatural lightning, it's slipping out of our fingers, yeah. They never told me it's such a blast.
was tired of being put right down by myself and not being what you thought you had found. Pulled hard in two directions by your desire to learn and my old affections. When I tried to share my world with you, you could not seem to tolerate the people I had grown to love. They shrank under your scrutiny, became the ones you'd hate. Why did everything, every little thing with you and me have to be so political? Everything, every little thing with you and me have to be so political. Underwhelmed about hanging around with you and feeling overcautious. Every little word, every little look, every little sigh, every little phrase put me deeper in your doghouse. You'd let me out to run across your world. I ran into a wall. You told me I built it, then you reel me in, ream me out, pick me up, push me out again, and then repeat it. Why did everything, every little thing with you and me have to be so political? Everything, every little thing with you and me have to be so political. Everything with you and me was too busy tripping on my tongue to try and stand my ground. And I can still see myself crying in your lap, asking you, are you happy with the man you have found? For what you did for me, I can see things now I never would have seen. And today I thought about what could have been, but could never be for you and me. 'Cause everything, every little thing with you and me had to be so political. Everything, every little thing with you and me had to be so political. Everything with you and me was so political.
adventures wear off you. Find in the tiny moments the bomb your files rain down from the skies, and would they fall down like cymbal crashes? Would the alarm bell sound? Would your eyelashes keep on missing time? But not all mine. It can be impractical. It can be impractical. So can you tell me why in every version of the events shown here there's another season that crawls by like years from blown speakers here? It came out magical. It came out magical. Just a contact high, one in every mood I've ever declined to fight, one in every single exchange you might find. Blow speakers time. It came out magical. It came out magical. Magical, out from loudspeakers. It came out magical, out from loudspeakers. It came out magical, out from loudspeakers. It came out magical, out from loudspeakers. Out from loudspeakers. Out from loudspeakers. Out from loudspeakers. Out from
We're back with Vic from Star Collector, and he's going to tell us about the songs he chose in that last block.
Thanks, Michael. All right. Well, maybe we'll work backwards. The last one that we heard was the New Pornographers, which will probably be known to a lot of your listeners because they are one of the few bands, maybe the only band I've got on today's menu that hit it kind of internationally. The rest of them are more, as you mentioned, like national or regional level folks. But, I was going to go with another slightly more obscure artist, but I just thought, the New Pornographers have been around now for quite a while. They have a great reputation. They fit, a number of formats, and I like a lot of their stuff. Their lead fellow, Carl Newman, he's a really fine writer, fine singer. He's got Nico Case, who's a really great vocalist along a lot of the time. And for many years, they had a fellow named Kurt Dahl on drums, who will factor later in one of the songs coming up too. And he and his brother had a band up here that were quite popular, a couple of bands actually that were quite popular as well before that. So long history with the New Pornographers, and that song was called From Blown Speakers from their album The Electric Version, and I just really dug it. So that was them. Before that, we had a band that probably broke up in the 90s, late 90s, but I absolutely love the song. And they also have tons of history here in Vancouver, another Vancouver band called Copyright, which was a great name because at first their logo was just the copyright sign, which of course, caused all sorts of shit. Their singer, Tom Anselmi, and their guitarist, Christian Thorvaldsen, were in a real seminal Vancouver band called Slow. And they had a really well-known song, at least in Canada, called Have Not Been the Same, which you can still find that video and that song on YouTube, I'm sure. And they then formed Copyright, which was a little more progressive, had a little less punk rock edge. And that song, Into the Light, it's just transcendent for me. Every time I listen to it, it just hits every single button. It's got an amazing guitar line, catchy as hell. Production is unbelievable. I guess the only tie that we really have to Copyright that I can think of, because I don't actually know the guys in this band, is that when we did our third record called Flash Arrows and the Money Shot, Kevin Kane from the Grapes of Wrath that was co-producing with me was friends with their drummer. His name was Pete Bourne. And Kevin was able to get Pete's drums for us to use in the studio because he had a killer set of drums. So our drummer Ringo got to play some pretty sweet drums. But in terms of the band themselves, yeah, I don't know them. I'm just a really big fan and wish they had stayed around longer. Before that, we had another band that would probably still be around today if, unfortunately, I remember last time when you and I were on, you started with the Tragically Hip, and we talked a little bit about Gord Downey.
Right.
Well, here's another band that was around for, as many years as the Tragically Hip, maybe even a little bit longer. And their singer, John Mann, tragically passed away as well of an illness about 5 years ago. They were more of a national level band. They started out here in Vancouver as kind of a Celtic three-piece, no drums or anything. And the song that we played, Political, is from that period. They actually did a re-recording of it later that had the full band arrangement, but to me, it didn't resonate the same way. There's something extremely powerful. And what I love about Spirit of the West and John Mann's lyrics are just the incredible passion and the depth of what he put out. And the other fellow who was the main guy, Jeff Kelly, also did some writing. And the two of them together were just a fabulous songwriting combination. And they made quite a few albums up here and were really quite well known. And, they were on the verge of greatness a few times, I think, and probably deservedly so. It was really hard to choose a song of theirs. They have another song from that album called Take It From the Source that if any of the listeners are out there, it'll bring you to tears. It's so powerful. But Political kind of represents all sides of Spirit of the West. And in one of my old pre-Star Collector bands, we had the honor to open for them. And they were just as nice guys as they were talented. So I look at Spirit of the West quite fondly. And to start off the block, we had, as I mentioned, Pure. And they were a band, too, that are no longer around. And I guess I don't necessarily want this to be the theme because it's kind of sad, but their guitarist, Todd Simcoe, also passed away a number of years ago. And he and the lead singer, Geordie Birch, were another great songwriting combo. And they were kind of like a real, had a real flash, a real great attitude about them. Their debut, the one that Blast was on, the one that we played, was produced by Jerry Harrison of the Talking Heads. And that was their big debut on a major label. And they kind of came out of the same scene that Steve and I did in our band. We got to play with them a bunch of times. There's a fabulous club here called the Town Pump that I have a vivid memory of us playing with them and standing there watching them and then us going on. And it was a really powerful and great time in Vancouver music back in the sort of mid to late 90s. So yeah, I again, Pure made a bunch of good records. I highly recommend you go check them out. And that song I just chose because it just kicks. It's just a great opener for a block. So there we go, block number one.
All right. There were two songs that you chose, one in this block and one especially in the second block, which I've already talked to you about. We'll talk more when we come back from that. But there were two songs in here that really drove home the point I made a few moments ago about commerce doesn't necessarily equal art. The first one was, it's inexplicable to me that copyright never got a firm grip on the marketplace. That's foolish to me.
I know. Isn't that incredible? That song just, I know.
Well, it wasn't a rubber stamp pop song. It wasn't something that you heard in that way from everybody else. It wasn't generic. They had identity. They had some flair going on there. And it's all timing and luck, and I can't explain it. And meanwhile, bands that don't have half the juice that they had, platinum sellers.
Yeah,
So
I wish I knew them personally to tell them that you said that, but I don't.
I wish you did. Well, maybe someone who knows them is listening and they'll tell them.
I think they're still around here. A number of years ago, Tom, the singer, I remember he ended up buying a part of this place called the Waldorf Hotel that had this really funky place called the Tiki Room that bands would play in, and we did some Star Collector shows there. That was the last I heard of them, and I'm going to say that was probably 10 years ago. So yeah, I don't really know their story since then, but I couldn't agree with you more. The minute you put that song on, you're just like, really?
Yeah. And it was almost impossible to find. That's the other bad part of it, is that it's not something where you like reach out your hand and, oh, there they are. You got to go hunting for them.
Well, I'm sorry if I put you on a little bit of a hunt, but there you go. It was worth it.
It was worth it. It was worth it. I'm just saying that's another part of the injustices. There are a lot of bands who didn't make it the first time around, but they're all over streaming and they're downloadable. And it's almost like copyright fell off the face of the earth in a lot of ways. It's a shame, a damn shame. Anyway, the other song, which we will talk about when we come back, is the one that really blew my mind as far as why this wasn't a massive global hit and why this guy's name isn't on everybody's lips. Who are you starting off second block with?
Okay, so that last set actually turned out to be all Vancouver-based bands, which was not my initial intention, but when I ended up putting the blocks together, I realized that I had a handful of Vancouver. So on this one, I chose to focus on bands that were not Vancouver-based, that were more across Canada. And just like last time, I thought it would be easier because I put aside that first 8 bands. Let me tell you, I had another list of at least 8 more that I was like, oh, how can I not play Elephant Stone? How can I not play? I mean, anyway, there'll be a part 3 at some point. We'll get to them, I'm sure, because
we will.
This is great fun for both of us. But so on this set, we're going to start off with a band that was based out of Calgary, Alberta, called Zucker Baby. And if nothing else, you gotta love their name.
There you go. We'll be back after this set to talk about the songs that Vic chose.
Today I walked out on my obvious doubts, 6 feet under the ground. All the numbers I've been, the situation you see, unlucky 13. I was in on my blind side, taking the long ride, born with a frown and the sins of a clown. So what if breath was sensitive and addictive, that I lost my way back home? So I dream and cry. Take me back in time, I'm crossing the line, wishing you would arrive. I remember your face, I couldn't tell you the place, always the catch, not the chase. Oh, the secondhand news gave me maximum blues, abused and confused. I was hit at my blind side, taking the long ride, born with a frown and the sins of a clown. So what if breath was sensitive and addictive, that I lost my nerve? I lost my Yes, I was in on my blind side, taking the long ride, born with a frown and the sins of a clown. So what if breath was sensitive and addictive, that I lost my nerve? I was in on my blind side, taking the long ride, born with a frown and the sins of a clown. So what if breath was sensitive and addictive, that I lost my way? So I dream and cry. Take me back in time, I'm crossing the line, wishing you would Look up here. Have you ever seen a sky look more clear? Big stretch Cadillac, hot tub destination Timbuktu. timeshare, a tent, acoustic, campfire blues. Fell asleep in a hot air balloon, and I woke up on the moon, and I said, ooh, what a fantastic place to be. And hey, Mumblebee, he mumbles a little tune in the key of Z. Raccoon, garbage cans, grizzly, pterodactyl eggs, and coyotes too. And hey, the sun on your breast, the metal detecting old man searches for the treasure chest. Beach ball, trampoline, no sink, the seagull burglar comes with flies. I built a castle out of blankets and chairs in hope you'd move in with me. And I said, ooh, what a fantastic place it would be. Don't cry. The clumsy giraffe stands up and bumps his head on the sky. Let's not think about no diesel iron factories and no neon lights. I was fishing in the fountain of youth. I caught a Spanish doubloon, and I said, ooh, what a fantastic place this could be. Well, I was dangling from the chandelier. I thought, ooh, it all looked so big from up here. And I said, ooh, what a fantastic place. Ooh, what a fantastic place to be. stuck on people who talk of a promised land. They've never been to the doors, they can't understand. I've never had this chance before, and I might not get it again. To look around, I can free my hope till I hear my calling again. It was the typical movement that makes such mystical time, and the rhythms with me down a beautiful slide. Time's up on all of the plans we've made. The last run, we're climbing this masquerade. The moments pass to change your life. They feel like nothing. The silent shakes, our memory stands in shadows writing. I've never felt true love before. Tonight I'm shaking straight to the source. One day to wake from a sea of gray. I got a silent hope for the cost. Was it strangers listening? Brought the few to ignite. All the rhythms with me down a beautiful slide. There's no hope on this daydream to bring the secret to light. You can come and go with me. We'll take a beautiful slide. It was the typical movement that makes this mystical time, and the rhythm is with me down a beautiful slide. There's no hope on this daydream to bring the secret. Let's bring the secret to light. You can come and go with me. This one's a beautiful slide.
We are back with Vic Wayne from Star Collector. And Vic, what did you have in that last block for us?
Okay, well, maybe this time around we'll start at the beginning of the block and work towards the end, because I know you want to talk a little bit about the last song. Let's go with start with the first song that I chose, which was a band from Calgary, which is in the province next to the province I live in. So I live in BC. Alberta is next to us, and Calgary is one of the main cities there. And I grew up in Alberta. I grew up in Edmonton, which is north of Calgary. In fact, both my kids have chosen to live in Calgary now that they're a little bit older. Zucker Baby were a band that, again, no longer, they played into the 2000s, but and in fact they actually still are a band. They just were on a a major label into the 2000s, and then they kind of went indie after that. They are focused around two guys: the singer, who's got just an amazing voice, Andy Eichhorn, and a guitar player named Reed Shimazawa. And the two of them, again, great songwriting tandem. They really complement each other. I often talk about, people ask about the dynamic with Steve and I in our band, and I always say that there's this real yin-yang thing that goes on. The stuff that I bring complements what Steve brings and vice versa. And when I listen to Zucker Baby, I hear that exact same dynamic. One of them's a killer guitar player with a great harmony voice, and the other one's a great lead singer, plays rhythm. They sound great together. They obviously write well together. We had the fortune to play with them in Calgary one time on one of our probably our last tour before we took our hiatus, pre-game day. In about 2008, 2009, we were touring through Calgary, and we got the opportunity to play with them. It was pretty cool because I'm a big fan, and I'd only actually seen them live once before with a band that you and I had last episode called Treble Charger. They were doing a double bill, and that was a really memorable show for me. So I chose Blindside, which is, again, I could have chosen a bunch of songs. That was the lesser, probably not as well known as a couple of their other songs up here in Canada. I chose it because it's one of my favorites, and also a pal of mine that I'm in a hockey pool with co-wrote it. So go figure. And I didn't even find that out until a couple of years ago, like probably 15 years after the album came out. And that's not why I chose it, but I thought, I might as well send my friend Kevin a shout out. So anyhow, so that was Zucker Baby. So then I guess we'll the next one I played was a solo artist, which totally doesn't fall into the power pop vein that a lot of the shows that we're part of and a lot of shows that I listen to, especially in this last little bit, focus around. Danny Michel's more of a singer-songwriter. He does a band version of a lot of stuff. He does a lot of acoustic kind of stuff. He's quite a diverse artist, and he's quite possibly one of my all-time favorite Canadian songwriters. If you want to talk about difficult picking a song, I mean, Danny's probably got about 15 albums, and I'm just saying that off the top of my head, but I bet if you look him up, you'll be like, holy crap, this guy's got so much stuff. And it's all such top quality. His lyrical approaches are just fabulous, and his melodies, he's got a great voice. He's from Ontario, and boy, it was hard to choose a song of his. We actually, for a while before he started, Star Collector's tie-in with Danny, I guess, is pretty minimal, but I'll mention it anyway. Before he became a full-time solo artist, he played in a band briefly called Starling. And Starling played here at the Starfish Room with Star Collector. We had an all-star, I guess pun intended, show that night. Anyway, he's a fabulous musician. He plays a lot of the instruments himself. I think sometimes he'll bring a drummer in, but often does everything else himself. So the song I chose is my wife's favorite song of his. And that's not the only reason I chose it. The reason I chose Fantastic Place, it's one of his earliest songs. It's on his first album. It's just simply lyrically incredible, like the tie-in, the way he uses metaphor, the way he uses wordplay. I'm a big fan of wordplay. I love to be able to use words that sound the same but mean two different things. You know, stairs. And Danny does that with aplomb. I'm such a huge fan of his lyrical approach. So Fantastic Place is just a really, really kind of wild and wonderful song. People that like singer-songwriter kind of stuff. And again, I don't want to peg him as, you know, he's not just Nick Drake. It's not this kind of just, you know, it's not always in this kind of mellow vibe. And don't get me wrong, I love Nick Drake, but Danny's got some rockin' stuff. He's got some stuff that's very Paul Simon-ish. He does sort of float around the map a bit, but it always sounds like Danny Michel. And I've seen him a couple times live here in Vancouver. On one of our anniversaries, he was playing here, and I just surprised my wife by taking her to a show of his at this little church hall out in Vancouver. And oh man, yeah, I'm just kind of speechless. He's a fabulous Canadian artist, so please check him out. And now we're going all the way to the east coast of Canada. And this is someone that was my last minute substitute out of the first show. This fellow's name is Joel Plaskett. And Joel Plaskett was in a band that was quite well, the critics loved them up here, called Thrush Hermit. But then Joel went solo. Again, now we're probably talking 20 years ago. His band, Thrush Hermit, I think probably finished in about the late 90s, early 2000s. And since then, he's been a solo artist and is also incredibly prolific, like Danny Michel, just written, I don't know, again, I'm sure he has at least 10 albums out in the 20 years or so. I mean, and they're all really good quality. Now, the thing I notice about Joel Plaskett, and a few people have mentioned it to me, is you mentioned Neil Young. And a lot of people will say Neil Young's voice is an acquired taste.
I know.
Yeah, right? Well, Joel Plaskett, a lot of people will say, geez, what's up with that? And I'm like, well, you know what? Just listen to the songs, man. Just listen to the songs, listen to the lyrics, listen to the melodies, listen to the chord changes. And after a while, you get used to his voice, and I find it incredibly endearing. However, it's not your, typical rock voice or typical, vocal voice. But it's very unique. And the minute I hear it, I know it's his stuff. So I saw Joel play once solo in Victoria when I was over there, but I don't know him. I've just been a fan from afar for a long time. My siblings are huge fans of his. Kevin Kane, that I mentioned, a friend of mine from the Grapes of Wrath, is a huge fan of his. I know a lot of, he's very well respected in the music world. So again, this was really hard to choose a song. I must have had a list. I must have narrowed it down to like 5 or 6, which was painful in itself. And then I finally was like, okay, why am I going to go with this one? And if for no other reason, I love it as much as the rest, but I love it. I also love it because the chorus mentions Edmonton, Alberta, and Halifax. And I was born in Halifax and I grew up in Edmonton. So if he could have just thrown Vancouver in that lyric, it would have been like the perfect triumvirate of my life living in Canada. It's the opening track on his first solo album. And it just immediately, like for me, you just hear it and you go, oh, okay, this guy's got it. This guy knows how to write songs. And yeah, so that song, Down at the Khyber, I don't even really know what the Khyber is. It might be a club or a river. I don't know. I guess I should look it up before I do these.
I believe it's a river, but it's another one of those factoids that kind of went in one ear and out the other in my youth.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That makes sense. I mean, I met my love down at the Khyber. That's the line in the song. So I guess that makes sense. In a van down by the river.
There you go.
Anyhow, Joel Plaskett, fabulous stuff. He's my favorite album of his, though. That song, that's my second favorite album. if for folks out there, he has an album that as a whole, I would say is my favorite. It's called Ashtray Rock. Just check it out. Say no more. Check out Ashtray Rock. I'll say it one more time. Ashtray Rock. Okay.
In case you missed the title of that last album, folks, it was, I believe,
Ashtray
Rock. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. And we finished up with, and you and I did talk a little bit about this off air before we went on, and I'm so glad you liked it so much, the Mark Kleiner Power Trio. Now, the Mark Kleiner Power Trio only released one album, and Mark Kleiner was in a band before that called Jungle, which was also really cool and really good. And in fact, funny, it just occurred to me as I'm talking about it, the bass player from Jungle was also in Slow, which was the pre-copyright band. So there's a bit of a tie in there. But Mark Kleiner, interesting guy. So they made this album, and then he moved to Saskatchewan to become a minister. And he lives there with like his 5 or 6 kids on a farm with his wife and this huge brood. And he's a minister, but he still does music. And about 5-6 years ago, can't remember the exact year. I want to say, about 6 years ago, he did a reunion with the Mark Kleiner Power Trio show here, and I was thrilled to go to it. It was great fun. And his drummer is also the guy that I mentioned earlier from New Pornographers, Kurt Dahl. So Mark Kleiner, I mean, you're right. You mentioned how much you love that song. And again, that whole album, I mean, I don't know if you had a chance. If you like that song enough, I thought, well, maybe you check out the rest of the album.
I will. I haven't yet. All of the elements that you will find in USA pop, power pop, whatever you want to call it, music, all of the elements that you will find in the songs that became hits are all present in this song. Why is this song not being blasted out of radios all over America?
Yeah. I mean,
timing and luck. Timing and luck.
Timing and luck. I mean, the album is now probably, I think it came out in about 2002. Mm-hmm. So it's, going on 20 years old now. But you're right. At the time, it was popular locally, but I don't think it even got, from my knowledge, my memory, I don't really recall that it even got to a national level. And you're right. I mean, if you listen to that whole album, you'll just be blown away. The songs all have that same joie de vivre and energy, and as that song Beautiful Slide. So, oh man, I know. And, the only tie-in I have is I don't know him, and I don't really know Kurt Dahl at all either, or the bass player Pete. But the closest tie-in that we had is that album was kind of important when we were doing our third album called Flash Arrows and the Money Shot. And Kevin, who I mentioned earlier, and I were going to co-produce it. And we were looking for albums that we thought we wanted to go for the same kind of production style and the same sounds and the same attitude. And we kept coming back to this local album. Of all the albums that are out there, millions of albums, he said, listen to this Mark Kleiner album that just came out last year. I think it had been a year old at the time. And I listened to it, and I had the same reaction that you did, just like, yes. Mm-hmm. That's what we're after. So we almost used the same engineer, we almost used the same studio, and at the very last minute we got offered a really good deal at a really big studio, so we changed tack. But sonically as well, it was kind of important in us, in my own musical world in that respect. So yeah, so there you go. There's boy, that went fast. You want the other 8 I've got? No, just kidding. We'll do it. We'll do it.
And folks, before we move on, I would be remiss if I failed to mention that Vic is sitting here quite stylishly sporting a Secret Weapon t-shirt from Boris Bowden and Woody Radio, our fearless leader. So even though this is audio and not video, you need to know that the whole time you've been listening to him, he's been flying the Woody Radio flag, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you noticed. I just love, don't you love this golden yellow color? It's yeah.
It would make you stand out in any crowd as a giant among men.
Well, I am pretty tall.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad you noticed. Boris has been incredible, and Gidget too. I mean, our album came out quite a while ago now, and we're still, right at the top of their charts. And they still, Boris plays our stuff all the time, and you play our stuff, and Rick plays our stuff on Chasing the Essential, and Mike plays our stuff. I mean, I think Mike's played us every week for about 8 months. Literally, he hasn't missed a week. Like, that's just incredible. So yeah, Woody Radio has been incredibly good to us, and I am, proud to. I've got a Gidget shirt, I've got a Mike shirt. I just went with the yellow today because I felt yellow, and the weather is not sunshiny whatsoever here. But what the hell?
It's nice and sunny on a not sunny day.
Exactly.
All right, now it is the time we have all been waiting for eagerly. where you share 3 more of your songs with us. What song is up first?
All right. Well, I guess we'll do the same thing. We'll talk about them later. First, we are starting with the lead track off our aforementioned Flash Arrows in the Money Shot album, Love and All It Kills.
All right, here's Star Collector, and we'll be back at the end of this block so Vic can tell you about these songs.
I've been taking all your scraping, now I'm shaking off what's breaking down. You've been talking, laugh track mocking, not so shocking, I'm the walking clown. Say I'm seething, disbelieving, now I'm leaving, got to breathe and fly. Wide intention, black dissension, no attention, basic questions. Why? Here with all the time I spent, bought and sold my gift. Faustian act, never to look back, made a deal. And shooting for Mars, the future was ours. The future was open, wide like space. We wish for the stars, was that so bizarre? The stars were the faces of Dorian Gray. Gathered around an imaginary campfire in the evil room, joined by belief in our own potential. Down in Daddy's tomb, in the evil room, made a deal. And shooting for Mars, the future was ours. The future was open, wide like space. We wished for the stars, was that so bizarre? The stars were the faces of Dorian Grace. And shooting for Mars, the future was ours. The future was open, wide like space. We wish to be stars, is that who we are? Or simply the faces of Dorian Gray? You can pry and
All right, so we are back with Vic from Star Collector, and we just heard 3 Star Collector tracks that he chose for us. Why don't you tell him about them?
Okay, thanks, Michael. Let's start with number 1. So I chose Love and All It Kills, which is the lead-off track from our 3rd album, Flash Arrows and the Money Shot. And I mentioned earlier that this was an album that Kevin from the Grapes and I produced together. We co-wrote a song for it. Steve, our guitar player, and I wrote a lot of the songs on that one together. And but that particular song is kind of funny because we had all the songs ready to go in pre-production. We were ready to go in the studio, and about a week away, Kevin said, I still think we need like a single lead-off track kind of song. And here I had these other ones that I thought, yeah, they'd be great to open the album with. And he said, do you have anything else? And I sort of thought back, and that song was actually written as kind of a mid-tempo-y kind of thing with Dave, my original guitar player and friend from the Mods, my first band. And it just sat there for, I don't know, 8-9 years. And I just kind of thought, I don't know, I'll just play it for him. I don't have much else. Like, he's heard of all the new stuff we got. And I just sort of played it on the acoustic, and he went, that's the one. Let's put that together. So the band put it together, and cowbells and slide guitars and screaming helter-skeltery vocal later, we had our opening track. And that one's the one that we would do on TV shows and, put on compilations. And we have got a thing on our YouTube channel, which is pretty cool, where Kevin played with us, and we actually did it on it. It was like a morning show, a TV show. So yeah, that on YouTube. But it's a great opening track. We opened some shows with it, or at least we used to. Probably open stuff with game day songs now, but you never know. So there we go, Love and All It Kills. That was also the time in the band that I thought we had a really killer band. We had a bass player there named Tyson that was in the band who had some great attitude and just a killer bass player. So, between the 4 of us and Kevin being part of it, it was a really joyful and powerful time in the band. So then we've got a song called The Evil Room. And The Evil Room actually also turns out to be a song that I wrote with Dave from a distance. He sent me some music and I heard it, and it immediately was evocative of this younger time when he and I were in the band with my brother Adam, playing in our first band, rehearsing in the basement. And we had this is the story that goes along with the lyric. So my dad had this back room in the basement where we rehearsed that he hardly ever used. And it was full of books on World War II. He was kind of fascinated with World War II. And it didn't have anything else in it, just this big oak table, these one bookshelf, and that was it. I don't even know if it had a window. So it was kind of almost creepy. I don't know. I didn't necessarily think that, but Dave always called it the evil room. So one day, while we were rehearsing and really feeling like we were, going somewhere, because of course, how kids feel that way. We were teenagers, right? So we had this we can do anything vibe. He said, let's go to the evil room. So we went into the evil room, and the 3 of us sat there. This is true. Held hands, seance style, and made a pact with the devil to one day be bigger than the Beatles. So that's what the evil room.
The toppermost of the poppermost, huh?
It's about the idealism. The idealism of youth is really what it's about, and it's still a real favorite of mine. So I'm always thrilled to get an opportunity to play it, because when you put a new album out, you don't always get the opportunity to play your older stuff. Right. So yeah, thanks for that opportunity, and so that's that song. And okay, and then I finished with our current single song called The Silent Type, which we did a video for not that long ago, and Steve makes our videos and did a fabulous job on this one, as he did on all the others. And it's got some of my favorite guitar parts on the album. Steve just came up with some brilliant stuff, and my brother Adam played some killer bass on it. And it's a song about introverts and how people who are not introverts are always trying to kind of figure out what's going on and what's behind the mask or the facade. So it ties into a portion of, there's a song cycle on Game Day that is about some stuff that I went through, and I'm not going to get into it too deeply here, but it is part of that song cycle and does factor into the overall quote story unquote. And it's just a personal favorite, and I'm quite pleased, because initially people had said, oh, what are the key tracks? I would always sort of go to Game Day and rip it off, and that one kind of crept up. We'd get reviews and someone would say, oh, there's this song called The Silent Type, you got to hear it. So I was really happy with the way that it kind of just found its way into at least our consciousness as one of the strong tracks on the album. So yeah, I enjoyed putting that one in there too. So there you go.
All right, fantastic stuff as always. And you and I talked, Vic, and what I've got in mind for you starting early next year is part 3 of this. And unless you run out of Canadian music, if you do, tell me. But we'll go for part 3 of this. And
Ain't
also,
gonna happen.
ain't gonna happen. One of the things I'm starting back up on my original show, I had a thing called the artist block. And the premise behind that was that the artists at the time would give me 4 songs that inspired them and one of their own. And they provided written comments that I read on the air. Well, over time, I gravitated more toward doing what we're doing right now, which is having a conversation and having it come from the artist rather than me reading off a piece of paper. So in 2022, the artist block will be an on-air segment, and it will be similar to what we did here, which is the artists will get to choose 8 songs that influence them and 3 of their own. So I would like to have you for that as well, so that you can step outside of the Canadian thing if you'd like and pick anything from anywhere that just means something to you.
Perfect. Oh yeah, all over that, my friend.
All right.
I'm not going to run out of Canadian stuff, and I certainly have no problem picking out. I mean, I might have a problem with picking songs simply because
Limiting
there's so
yourself.
many.
There you go.
But I will be happy to do that, and I think I've thought about that over the years, and I think I could probably put together a nice combo of stuff. So that's great. Thanks for agreeing to have me on again. I can't wait.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for being on the show, Vic, and we will talk soon.